Declines, rock, roll, and remember.
Hey, it's good to have you with us. Stick around. We're going to be traveling on a journey through the best hits ever on Rock, Roll, and Remember. And this week, we have got ourselves a very special artist profile of one of the most important groups in rock history. They used harmonies and great songs to rack up almost, about 4 dozen hits. Records like Sherry and Big Girls Don't Cry and Walk Like a Man. Of course, of the 4 Seasons. And we'll begin our profile of the group in a couple of minutes. But right now, let's kick off the show with some #1 hits by teen idols. Like the man... Dick Clark here to kick off our special artist profile of a New Jersey group that came together in 1955. And even though they've changed personnel many times, the lead voice has always been a man with talent to burn. That man is Frankie Valli, the leader of the 4 Seasons. Good record that hit the top and stayed there for 5 whole weeks for the 4 Seasons. Sherry. Now, that song hit in 1962, but the group actually had been cutting records since, 1956 or so. And this is Frankie Valli with the story of how Bob Crewe ended up signing the 4 Seasons to their first major record contract.
I think then it was in 59 where I was taking some masters around town and trying to sell them, and I ran into Bob Crewe, who had just been on an interview, and he said he'd like to hear what we were doing. And at that time, Bob was involved in producing records. We played him the tracks that we had cut. He liked them. He signed us to a record deal. We kind of did background on most of his productions for the first couple of years. And then in 62, we finally went to him and said, hey, Bob, we don't want to continue to do backgrounds. Are you going to record us or not? And we kind of forced him into recording us.
Big girls don't cry. Big girls don't cry. Big girls.
Boy, what a record. It was the second #1 record in a row for the 4 Seasons, right behind Sherry, which we heard just a couple of minutes ago. And just like Sherry, it also stayed at #1 for 5 weeks. Big Girls Don't Cry. Now, Dick Clark here with more of our special artist profile of a group that's gone on performing for decades, partly because of the trademark of its lead singer. And we'll talk about that special trademark after we hear how lead vocalist Frankie Valli used it in a great record by the 4 Seasons. This is Candy Girl. Frankie Valli leading the 4 Seasons, and a fun one to keep you company, whatever you're doing this time around. Candy Girl. Now, one of the things that set the 4 Seasons apart was the falsetto singing of Frankie Valli, and when I asked him about that particular trademark of his, this is what he said.
It's nothing new. I learned from some of the greatest that the trademark was important. The Nat King Coles, the Johnny Mathises, the Frank Sinatras, the Johnny Rays. The trademark was incredibly important, and we would use variations of that sound on different records. If the falsetto fit, we used it. If it didn't, we didn't. I've had successes with records that had no falsetto.
4 Seasons hitting the top 10 with a good record, Working My Way Back to You. A few minutes ago, Frankie Valli talked about his trademark falsetto, which he uses from time to time. And this artist also had some singing along the way that was in the high range, used the falsetto quite a bit with good results. Lou Christie. Dick Clark here with our special artist profile of a group that's gone down in history as one of the most important contributors to rock music. They had hit after hit after hit, featuring Frankie Valli singing fine songs written by another important member of the group. And we're going to talk about that man after we hear one of the big hits he wrote for the subject of our special artist profile, the 4 Seasons. Dawn, which was a really strong song sung by the 4 Seasons and written by a member of the group at the time. His name is Bob Gaudio. And this is Frankie Valli with the story of how he and Bob met and what Bob's meant to the group.
Well, Bob was on the road promoting a record with a group that he was with at the time called the Royal Teens. We were promoting a record also at the same time. We did a local television show in Pittsburgh. We got to know each other. I found out he came from New Jersey, or was living in New Jersey. Originally, I think he's from the Bronx. We got together in New Jersey. We decided to start working together. He joined our band. Gaudio and I have been partners now for years on a handshake, and he's been incredibly responsible for writing a lot of the material that we have done.
Song Bob Gaudio was inspired to write after being approached by a poor young girl in New York. That was Rag Doll by the Four Seasons. You know, four seems to be a very popular number when it comes to singing groups. I think Dick Clark back with more of our special artist profile of the Four Seasons, who've been blessed with a lead singer who can interpret a song like crazy, and we're going to talk about that after you have a little chance here to give a listen for yourself. Big hit by the Four Seasons. This is Ronnie. A song that still sounds great, doesn't it? The Four Seasons and Ronnie. You know, not everybody can put across a song like that. I mean, if you think about it, Frankie Valli really interpreted that song well, and when I talked with him about the way he gets into a piece of music, this is what he said.
Well, it is something like acting. You know, the fallacy about singing and people who go to study voice is for the technical parts of studying voice or the technical parts of acting, it's very good to go and study. But no one can teach you how to phrase or how to say a line. I mean, that's something that's, you know, that's an intricate part of what you're all about.
Boy, that song moves. The Four Seasons, giving it everything on Opus 17. Hey, did you notice that the group never says the title of the song in the lyrics? I mean, they never say Opus 17. As a matter of fact, you've got to wait until the last four words of this next record to hear the title of the song. And it's an unlikely one at that. This is Chicago with questions 67 and 68. Clark sitting in with you for more of our special artist profile of the Four Seasons. You know, it's true that Bob Gaudio wrote a lot of hits for the group, but it's also true that Frankie Valli didn't restrict himself to Bob for material, and we'll get a little deeper into that after we hear a Four Seasons hit that was written by Maurice Williams, who first took the song to #1 with the Zodiacs. Here the Four Seasons with The Four Seasons with their version of Stay, which was written by Maurice Williams of the Zodiacs. You know, that song kind of points out a fact about the Four Seasons, that Frankie Valli has never restricted himself to songs written by Bob Gaudio or Bob Crewe or any one person for that matter. And this is why.
I have a variety of writers that I, you know, work through or I can go to for material. And I think that sometimes if the artist is the writer, they fall into the trap of running dry and having nowhere else to go, or having all the other writers out there think that the doors are closed to everyone else. You know, you can't write every hit for yourself, and I don't think you should have to. I don't care where the song comes from. If it's great, that's what you record.
That song was definitely not written by Frankie Valli or Bob Crewe or Bob Gaudio for the Four Seasons. It was written way back in 1936 by Cole Porter. That was the season's version of I've Got You Under My Skin. Some great harmonies there. We're joining you for more of our special artist profile of the Four Seasons, who haven't had many of their hits recorded by other people, but that's good, and I'll tell you why after we hear one of those hits that sort of stayed identified with the Four Seasons, and the Four Seasons alone.
There ain't no...
Oh, that's a great record, isn't it? Yep, the Four Seasons. Let's hang on. Now, I mentioned a moment or two ago the group hasn't had many of their songs redone by other people. That's kind of a good thing, because that means that when people hear a Four Seasons song, they immediately identify that song with the Four Seasons and nobody else. And that's been just fine with their lead singer, Frankie Valli.
The song has to become you. It has to become a part of you. It has to become yours. And unless you can do that, there is no formula that can guarantee a hit. You may have one by accident, but sustaining that success will be almost impossible.
Groove's done it. Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons asking, who loves you? Which is a musical question if ever I heard one. Kind of like this song. What kind of fool do you think I am? Dick Clark picking up our Rock, Roll, and Remember special artist profile of the Four Seasons. You know, Frankie Valli is one of the few artists I can think of who recorded with a group while also being able to cut solo records, and I'll give you a few more details after we hear the first top 5 solo hit Frankie ever had. Song went gold. It's a good one. Can't Take My Eyes Off You. A little bit of big band sound on that solo effort by Frankie Valli, Can't Take My Eyes Off You. Now, that solo hit was released while Frankie was still in the Four Seasons, and surprisingly, cutting hits on his own and with the group never really caused any problems, from what he told me.
I didn't wake up one day and tell the guys in the group that I wanted to start singing solo. We planned doing it. We shared the royalties in it. So it was just a part of expanding our business and being something else. And we were trying to prove a point also to the industry that you could do more than one thing and still have success. And that was all at the same time. We had a Frankie Valli record out, we had a Wonder Who record out, and we had a Four Season record out. And they were all very successful at the same time.
The Four Seasons were the record that was on the charts at the very same time as Frankie Valli's solo hit of Can't Take My Eyes Off You, which we heard just a couple of minutes ago. That was the Four Seasons with Come On, Marianne. I think women's names have shown up in song titles as much as any other subject, and that kind of a subject is definitely not new. As a matter of fact, here's a song that goes way back to the 1800s. Dick Clark back with the final chapter in our special artist profile of the Four Seasons. If I can say anything about the leader of the group, it's that he is a very smart man. I don't mean just in book learning, but in something else. Let me explain that in just a second or two after we hear a great #1 gold single that was originally about the repeal of Prohibition. But the whole thing was changed, and it was retitled December 1963. #1 in gold for Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons. By the way, Jerry Polsey took the lead on that one. December 1963. All right, let me get back to something I brought up a couple of minutes ago about Frankie Valli being a smart man. Now, he is book smart, but maybe more importantly, he is street smart. And this is Frankie to talk a little bit about that.
I had a very colorful life, and I'm really thrilled about it. And I think having street sense is probably the most important education you can get in your whole life. There are no universities that teach that. There is no way that you can learn it except through experience. And depending on where you live, you live in the suburbs, it's a little different than when you live in the city.
That music will live forever. Great stuff. The Four Seasons with their #1 classic, Walk Like a Man. And I'd like to thank Frankie Valli for sharing some of his time with us this time about. I thank you, sir. And as long as we have just walked up the charts with the Four Seasons, well, we hang out with the Ventures. This is going to have to do it for this week's show. I'd like to thank Frankie Valli, Glenn Campbell, Tony Orlando, Ray